Their Eyes Were Watching God, Chapter 9. Joe's funeral was the finest thing Orange County had ever seen with eyes. The motor hearse, the Cadillac, the Buick carriages, Dr. Henderson there in his Lincoln, the hosts from far and wide. Then again the gold and red and purple, the gloat and glamour of the secret orders, each with its insinuations of power and glory, undreamed of by the uninitiated. People on farm horses and mules, babies riding astride of brothers' and sisters' backs, the Elks band ranked at the church door and playing Safe in the Arms of Jesus, with such a dominant drum rhythm that it could be stepped off smartly by the long line as it filed inside. The little Emperor of the Crossroads was leaving Orange County as he had come, with the outstretched hand of power. So, right now, the Chapter 9 is being opened by describing Joe's funeral. In the next paragraph, consider how does Janie act during his funeral? So let's pick back up right here. Janie starched and ironed her face and came set in the funeral behind her veil. It was like a wall of stone and steel. The funeral was going on outside. All things concerning death and burial were said and done. Finish. End. Nevermore. Darkness. Deep hole. Dissolution. Eternity. Weeping and wailing outside. Inside, the expensive black folds were resurrected and life. She did not reach outside for anything, nor did the things of death reach inside to disturb her calm. She set her face to Joe's funeral, and herself went rollicking with the springtime across the world. So how does Janie act during Jody's funeral? So a quote from the text explains that the funeral was going on outside. So she behaves how the townspeople expect her to. She irons and starches her face. It also describes her as weeping and wailing on the outside. However, I also want you to note the successive use of sentence fragments right here with the finish, end, nevermore, and so forth. What do you think the purpose of these are? I want for you to kind of consider it on your own as to why Hurston makes that stylistic choice. Also, consider this line, where it says, however, on the inside, Janie is rollicking with the springtime across the world. How does Janie actually feel? How is she behaving at Jody's funeral? And how does she actually feel on the inside about the fact that he is gone? And also, how do you feel about the way that she feels? Do you think that she's being selfish, or do you think she has a right to be happy that she is now free to live her life the way that she wants? All right, let's scoot on with our reading. After a while, the people finished their celebration and Janie went on home. Before she slept that night, she burned up every one of her head rags and went about the house the next morning with her hair in one thick braid, swinging well below her waist. That was the only change people saw in her. She kept the store in the same way, except of evening. She sat on the porch and listened and sent Hezekiah in to wait on the late custom. She saw no reason to rush at changing things around. She would have the rest of her life to do as she pleased. So, based upon this paragraph, what is the first change Janie makes, and what does it symbolize? So Janie burns her head rags and wears her hair in a long braid instead. And so what this symbolizes is that she's regained control of her identity, where the head rag symbolized her identity being controlled by Jody. So burning the head rag is her regaining control of her identity. And so she's no longer hiding who she is. However, there is still some restriction, symbolized by the fact that her hair is braided tight in a long braid behind her back. And so what is it that's restricting her still? What do you think it is? Well, what it is the townspeople and their expectation of her, the fact that she still needs to run the store, and the fact that she's still a mourning widow. So she does still have some restrictions, which are the expectations of those who surround her. So now for the next question, consider in this long following paragraph, how does Janie feel about her mother and nanny? Minus that E. Most of the day she was at the store, but at night she was there in the big house, and sometimes it creaked and cried all night under the weight of lonesomeness. She asked if she wanted to leave and go back where she had come from and try to find her mother. Maybe tend her grandmother's grave. Sort of look over the old stamping ground generally. Digging around inside of herself like that, she found that she had no interest in that seldom-seen mother at all. She hated her grandmother, had hidden it from herself all those years under the cloak of pity. She had been getting ready for her great journey to the horizons in search of people. It was important to all the world that she should find them and they find her. But she had been whipped like a cur dog and run off down a back road after things. It was all according to the way you see things. Some people could make a mud puddle and see an ocean with ships. But Nanny belonged to a other kind that loved to deal in scraps. Here Nanny had taken the biggest thing God had ever made, the horizon. For no matter how far a person can go, the horizon is still way beyond you. And pinched it into such a little bit of thing that she could tie it around her grandmother's neck tight enough to choke her. She hated the old woman who had twisted her so in the name of love. So Janie has some really harsh feelings about both her mother and her nanny. So first off, she has no interest in finding her mother who abandoned her. But she's also angry at her nanny who, as she describes, twisted her so in the name of love. So we can tell that she's angry at her nanny for marrying her off to Logan and for also teaching her lessons about love that she no longer agrees with. Instead, Janie doesn't want to be limited. She doesn't want to play it safe like Nanny wanted. She wants to explore the horizon in search of people. So Janie is an adventurer. Janie isn't scared of other people and what might happen. And therefore, she's kind of broken from the lessons that her nanny has taught her and decided to make her own way. So in this next kind of the ending part of the paragraph we started, consider what is the analogy that Hurston is developing here. Most humans didn't love one another nohow, and this mislove was so strong that even common blood couldn't overcome it all the time. She had found a jewel down inside herself, and she wanted to walk where people could see her and gleam it all around. But she had been set in the marketplace to sell, been set for still bait. When God had made the man, he made it out of stuff that sung all the time and glittered all over. Then after that, some angels got jealous and chopped him up into millions of pieces. But still he glittered and hummed. So they beat him down to nothing but sparks. But each little spark had a shine and a song. So they covered each one over with mud. And the loathsomeness in the sparks made them hunt for one another. But the mud is deaf and dumb. Like all the other tumbling mud balls, Janie had tried to show her shine. So what is the analogy? So Hurston compares people's identity to a jewel that God made, so that people could shine and be beautiful and have song. However, the angels became jealous, chopped up and beat down man, and covered his, that should say, shine in mud. So essentially what this represents analogously is that Janie feels as though this is what life has done to her, but she's determined to shine anyway and to find the other people who also shine. So let's keep reading. Janie found out very soon that her widowhood and property was a great challenge in South Florida. Before Jody had been dead a month, she noticed how often men who had never been intimates of Joe, drove considerable distances to ask after her welfares and offer their services as advisor. A woman by herself is a pitiful thing, she was told over and over again. They need aid and assistance. God never meant 'em to try and stand by themselves. You ain't been used to knocking round and doing for yourself, Miss Starks. You've been well taken care of, and you needs a man. Janie laughed at all these well-wishers because she knew that they knew plenty of women alone, that she was not the first one they had ever seen. But most of the others were poor, which essentially means that these men want her money. Besides, she liked being lonesome for a change. This freedom feeling was fine. Look at that alliteration. These men didn't represent a thing she wanted to know about. She had already experienced them through Logan and Joe. She felt like slapping some of them for sitting and grinning at her like a pack of chessy cats, trying to make out they looked like love. So note how men are trying to marry Janie, but she has no interest in them. She seems to be done with love, or definitely she's become much wiser about not trusting men because they might not love her, they might just want her money. Ike Green sat on her case seriously one evening on the store porch when he was lucky enough to catch her alone. You wants to be careful about who you marry, Miss Starks. These strange men run in here trying to take advantage of your condition. Mary, Janie almost screamed. Joe ain't had time to get cold yet. I ain't even given marriage the first thought. But you will. You's too young a woman to stay single, and you's too pretty for men to leave you alone. You's bound to marry. I hope not. I mean, at this present time, it don't seem before me. Joe ain't been dead 2 months, ain't got settled down in his grave. That's what you say now, but 2 months more, and you'll sing another tune. Then you'll want to be careful. Women folks is easy taken advantage of. You know what to let none of these men that's sitting around here get inside the tracks on you. They's just like a pack of hogs when they see a full trow. What you needs is a man that you done lived around and know all the sorts of managing your things for you and generally do round. Janie jumped up on her feet. Lord, Ike Green, use a case. This subject you bringing up ain't fit to be talked about at all. Let me go inside and help Hezekiah weigh up that barrel of sugar that just come in. She rushed on inside the store and whispered to Hezekiah, I'm gone to the house. Let me know when that old Peter-bed is gone, and I'll be right back. 6 months of wearing black passed, and not one suitor had ever gained the house porch. Janie talked and laughed in the store at times, but never seemed to want to go further. She was happy except for the store. She knew by her head that she was an absolute owner, but it always seemed to her that she was still clerking for Joe, and that soon he would come in and find something wrong with that she had done. She almost apologized to the tenants the first time she collected rent. Felt like an usurper. But she hid the feeling by sending Hezekiah, who was the best imitation of Joe that his 17 years could make. He'd even taken to smoking cigars. Since Joe's death, and tried to bite him tight in one side of his mouth like Joe. Every chance he got, he was reared back in Joe's swivel chair, trying to thrust out his lean belly into a punch. She laughed quietly at his no-harm posing, and pretended she didn't see it. One day, as she came in the back door of the store, she heard him bawling at Trick Crawford. Nah, indeed, we can't do nothing of the kind. I God, you ain't paid for them last rations you done it up. I God, you won't get no more out of this store than you got money to pay for. I God, this ain't Gimme Florida, this is Eatonville. Another time she overheard him using Joe's favorite expression for pointing out the difference between himself and the careless living mouthy town. I'm an educated man, a man arrangements in my hands. She laughed outright at that. His acting didn't hurt nobody, and she wouldn't know what to do without him. He sensed that and came to treat her like a babysitter, as if to say, You poor little thing, give it to Big Brother. He'll fix it for you. His sense of ownership made him honest, too, except for an occasional jawbreaker or a packet of sen-sen. The sen-sen was to let on to the other boys and the pullet-sized girls that he had liquor breath to cover. His business of managing stores and women's store owners was trying on a man's nerve. He needed a drink of liquor now and then to keep it up. So who is Hezekiah? So he works for Janie in the store, and he's imitating Jody's mannerisms. So he even begins to treat Janie like a babysitter. And he starts to drinking, or at least making a show of drinking, because he wants to kind of show off how managing Janie is stressing him out. So he's being super showy about this because he wants people to start seeing him like they used to see Jody. He's trying to take Jody's place. So Hezekiah and the men who are trying to marry Janie, they serve an important purpose in this chapter, where they're used to exemplify how the men think Janie can't make it on her own. So let's pick back up reading. When Janie emerged into her morning white, she had hosts of admirers in and out of the town, everything open and frank. Men of property too among the crowd, but nobody seemed to get any further than the store. She was always too busy to take them to the house to entertain. They were all so respectful and stiff with her that she might have been the Empress of Japan. So, man, we got 1 page left, but I'm going to have to put it on a second video. So I'll see you in Chapter 9, Part 2 in just a minute.